look at my Starfall! Wait, how big is Starfall? That's not my Starfall rim, is it? Starfall, baby! God, it's so huge! Wow, it's so big. Oh my God, 40-yard range on this big boy. 40-yard range. Yeah, guess what? I was terrified. I was terrified of this thing until I realized it doesn't DPS anything you're not in combat with. You're safe. You're safe. It's back to its old ways. It emanates from your character. The stars around you are falling to the sky, and it does damage. It's actually worth casting now. The Shadowlands balance Druid has undergone significant changes. It's going to take a little while to get over here. And it also seems a little screwy. I actually did this video already. But we're seeing some weird screwiness going on with it that's potentially intentional or a way of like hiding what they're actually doing. But I'm going to ignore that for now and go exactly off what Blizzard is saying it's doing. And we'll just deal with it that way. Because that's, even if they haven't quite finished it yet, or maybe I'm just reading too much into it, who knows. So eclipses are back. If you've never played a Druid when it had Eclipse is an old school way of thinking with the balanced Druid, but basically it pushes you into either a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse where your lunar spell becomes more powerful, Starfire in this case, or solar eclipse where your Wrath becomes more powerful, it casts a bit faster, things like that. Now, this has actually turned me a little bit away from the Druid, although it does raise the skill cap a little bit. The way it works is to be procced. So if you cast Wraths, it has a chance to proc Lunar Eclipse, all right? It procs the opposite one. And then when you're casting Starfires, it has a chance to proc Solar Eclipse. Now, what this basically boils down to is you going backwards and forwards between the two. And the reason for that is they have an internal cooldown of 30 seconds. So once you've popped off your Lunar Eclipse, it's 30 seconds until you do that again, which means you're just going to cast Wraths. You're going to be casting Lunar Eclipse, casting Starfires until your Solar Eclipse procs, casting Wraths until your Lunar Eclipse procs. Now, you can mess around with that because you can prevent it procking, right? You know if one of your eclipses is more powerful, say, for AoE or for single target burst. So let's say you know something's about to happen that's going to be huge AoE and you want to be in, say, Solar Eclipse. You can prevent that from happening because you know it's going to proc, right? The internal cooldown is finished. It will proc whenever it's ready to go. So you hold back on casting Starfires because they will proc Solar Eclipse. So you cast some Wraths, and then it's going to the big AoE. You can cast some Starfires. You'll go into Solar Eclipse at the exact right time. It does raise the skill cap, but that's not what bothers me. What bothers me is, while that element does exist, it does feel in a lot of ways you're just going backwards and forwards. Like a standard gameplay loop, you're just kind of going backwards and forwards, and you're kind of at the mercy of the game in utilizing those, because with this 30-second internal cooldown, you can't delay too much because you might as well just go back. So although I am talking about some element of setup and some elements of skill involved, it's one or two casts here or there to make it work, which will define you for the rest of the spec, but on the majority of the occasion, you're just going to be back and forth. Now, added to that is I personally don't find the eclipses that interesting. Nothing much else happens. What I think could be a really ultimate fix and would absolutely bring me back into the fold with balance would be that once you hit an eclipse, you gain access to a new spell. Something like a moon falling from the sky. That would be nice. As currently looking at the talents, it seems unlikely New Moon's going to make an appearance again. So I don't understand, or I would like, I should say, that if you hit Lunar Eclipse, you can cast a full moon onto the target. That would make hitting Lunar Eclipse much more satisfying and interesting. Similarly, if we went over to Solar Eclipse, you can cast a Solar Flare or something along those lines. Something that really sits thematically with that. Or crash a sun into the ground. That'd be fine too. And that would make going to these eclipses much more fun. As it stands, hitting an eclipse, you're kind of casting the same spells anyway. And that's something I think we probably want to get away from, and to make them a little bit more interesting, a little bit more impactful. Star Surge has been reworked, obviously with this new system as well, is that Star Surge now extends your eclipse. So if you want to, going back to what we said earlier, if you want to be in Solar Eclipse for AoE, or you want to be in Lunar for single target, or whatever, vice versa. Once you hit that eclipse, you can use Star Surges to extend it. Starfall no longer overlaps, so you can't cast multiple Starfalls, if that's what you're thinking. Once Starfall is up, it is up. It's a buff on you. You can't stack that buff multiple times. So that's what you're going to be doing there. Celestial Alignment just gives you double the eclipses at the same time. So that's exactly how this is going to work. Everything else remains relatively the same besides the re-addition of Heart of the Wild, which is a great addition. You gain some more CC options, and you can really buff yourself into your chosen affinity. So if you do need to off-tank that boss for a little while, Heart of the Wild, going into Guardian form, having double Frenzied Rejuves, popping Iron Fur, things like that are really helpful. And you also gain a lot of standard stuff back. In particular, my most exciting one isn't Cyclone, although we are getting that back. It is, of course, Stampeding Roar. Stampeding Roar is such a wonderful, wonderful group-wide ability that having it back on all Druid specializations, not just balance, is so good. Like, I'm using it at any opportunity I possibly can. So having that back in has been tremendous as well. So far for me, the Balance Druid is not quite there, but part of that might also be the lack of a good zone ability. The Bastion zone ability, the kind of scam symbiosis, which just kind of gives some stats and stuff, not paid off for me just yet. I'm going to play around with it a little bit more, but it's really kind of passive. And we do know that the Night Fae are getting a particularly interesting zone ability where they're going to fire off massive amounts of spells in a very short window. That might be what I'm looking for. I would still definitely like to see some elements of the eclipses be a bit more interesting, but this zone ability might actually pay off. But then again, some of you might say, I don't like Night Fae. I really hope the Balance Druid isn't tied to that ability. I agree. We'll look when we get access to them.